"Pretend to be my wife," the rich cowboy said, but the Apache girl smiled. "I want more." The sun hung low over the dusty town of Silver Creek, casting long shadows on the ground. In the small, weather-beaten saloon, the air was thick with the scent of tobacco smoke and the sound of clinking glasses. Cole Benson, a wealthy cowboy known for his sprawling ranch and fine taste, sat at a corner table nursing a whiskey. His eyes were fixed on the rough men gathered around the bar, but his mind was elsewhere. His thoughts drifted to the upcoming gala, an event he could not afford to miss. His reputation, however, was on the line. For months, rumors had been swirling about Cole, rumors that spoke of a man who could not be trusted, a man whose name was forever tied to scandals and rumors of greed. The townspeople whispered behind his back, and those with money and influence refused to associate with him. But Cole wasn't worried about those rumors. He was concerned about something far more important: his social standing. He needed a respectable wife to attend the gala, to present himself as a man of honor, someone who could be trusted with wealth and power. Yet the idea of finding a woman who could fit that role seemed impossible. The women in town were either already spoken for or not the type he needed. He needed someone with elegance, grace, and beauty, someone who could convince the town and its elite that he was the right man. But where could he find such a woman? As he sat there thinking, a thought crossed his mind: why not hire someone? There had to be a woman out there who could play the part. He'd seen plenty of women willing to do anything for money. Surely there was someone who would pretend to be his wife in exchange for a price. He'd pay well. The idea brought a sly smile to his lips. That's when his eyes caught something, or rather, someone, across the room. She was standing near the entrance, watching the room with sharp, intelligent eyes. She was unlike anyone Cole had seen in this town. Tall and proud, with dark hair that fell like a waterfall over her shoulders, and a gaze that seemed to pierce through him, as if she could see his every thought. She was wearing simple clothes, nothing extravagant, but there was an undeniable strength about her. It was the way she carried herself, the way her posture exuded confidence and pride. It was as though she didn't belong in this dusty town, yet she was somehow a part of it, standing at the very heart of it. Her name, as he learned later, was Tala. She was Apache, a woman of the land, proud of her heritage, proud of who she was. Cole had heard stories about her. They said she was independent, that she didn't take kindly to being told what to do. She was a woman who had grown up with the hardships of her people, and she had no interest in conforming to the expectations of the settlers and townsfolk who often looked down upon her. And that was exactly why Cole needed her. He watched as Tala moved gracefully through the saloon, her eyes never faltering, her presence commanding attention without even trying. She spoke with the barkeep for a moment before glancing around the room once more. Her gaze landed on Cole, and for a brief moment their eyes locked. He felt a spark, a connection, if only for a second. It was as if she had read him, understood his needs, and knew exactly what he was thinking. Tala walked up to him, her footsteps steady and confident. She didn't seem intimidated by him, unlike most women who might shy away from the sight of such a powerful, well-known man. No, Tala was different. She smiled, a small, knowing smile, and then spoke, her voice calm and steady, yet carrying an edge that made Cole pay attention. "I hear you need a wife," she said simply, looking him over with an air of curiosity, as if she was deciding whether he was worth her time. Cole was taken aback for a moment. He had expected to make an offer, not have it thrown back at him so directly. But instead of being offended, he found himself intrigued. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Not just any wife," he replied, a hint of challenge in his voice. "I need someone to attend the gala with me, someone respectable, someone who can help me restore my reputation. I'm willing to pay well for the right woman." Tala raised an eyebrow, her lips curling slightly. "And you think I'm the one?" "Are you?" Cole asked, his gaze narrowing with interest. She chuckled softly, the sound low and melodic. "You underestimate me, Mr. Benson. I'm not looking for money. I'm looking for something more." Cole's curiosity was piqued. What could she possibly want beyond money? Most women would jump at the chance to live a life of luxury, but Tala wasn't like the other women he had known. There was something about her, something fierce and independent that caught his attention. He leaned forward, studying her carefully. "What exactly do you want?" he asked, his voice now softer, more serious. Tala didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked him up and down, taking in his fine clothes, his rugged features, and his wealth, visible in the way he carried himself. Then, with a quiet but confident smile, she said, "I want more than just a role to play. I want to use this to my advantage to make a difference." Cole frowned, trying to understand. "Make a difference? What do you mean?" She stood taller now, as if the conversation had shifted in her favor. "I am not some trophy wife you can show off to your friends. I want to use this to gain something for myself, something that will help my people, something real." Cole's mind raced as he processed her words. He had come into this with a simple plan, to hire a woman to pretend to be his wife. But now he realized that Tala wasn't interested in playing a part. She had her own agenda, something bigger than what he had envisioned. And for the first time in a long while, he felt out of his depth. "Interesting," he murmured, leaning back in his chair. "And what would that take?" Tala met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Help me, and I'll help you. If you want me to be your wife, you will have to let me use this situation to secure something for myself and my people. If you want to restore your reputation, you'll have to trust me. I won't just be your wife for show. I'll be a partner." Cole looked at her, weighing her words carefully. There was a certain boldness in her offer, a certain challenge in her tone that made his heart race. This wasn't going to be an easy arrangement, but then again, nothing worth having ever was. "I'm listening," he said finally, his voice steady. "But understand this, I'm not one to be easily manipulated." Tala smiled again, her eyes glinting with something that made Cole uneasy and excited all at once. "We'll see about that, Mr. Benson." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Cole sitting there with a sense of unease settling in his chest. He wasn't sure what he had gotten himself into, but one thing was certain. He was about to embark on a journey with this woman that would change everything. And for the first time in a long while, he wasn't sure whether he was ready for what was to come. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and tension. Cole Benson had never expected his life to take such a turn. What had started as a simple offer to hire someone to play the role of his wife for a few weeks had evolved into something far more complicated and far more intriguing. Tala was not the woman he had imagined. She wasn't interested in playing a quiet, obedient role. From the start, it had been clear she had a mind of her own, and that mind was sharp. Cole had hoped the arrangement would be straightforward. She would attend the gala, smile for the crowds, and leave with the money. But Tala had made it clear she wasn't there just for the role. She wasn't just playing a part. She was using this as a stepping stone to something much bigger, and he was tangled up in it now. Their first few days together had been tense, with both of them testing the boundaries of their arrangement. Tala had agreed to pose as his wife, but she made it clear that she wasn't about to be a passive participant. She insisted on attending meetings with Cole, discussing business with his associates, and even offering her own opinions during conversations with his neighbors. At first, Cole was taken aback by how freely she spoke. He was used to people respecting his authority and keeping their opinions to themselves, but Tala had no such reservations. She spoke her mind openly, challenging him on matters of ethics, fairness, and respect for others. At first, he didn't know how to handle it. He had grown up in a world where silence was often valued more than speech, especially from women, but Tala didn't fit that mold. One afternoon, after a particularly heated discussion about land disputes with a neighboring rancher, Cole found himself watching Tala, studying her more closely than before. She was sitting across from him in the study, her posture relaxed but alert, her eyes gleaming with a quiet intensity. She wasn't just a pretty face, she had depth. Her intelligence was impossible to ignore. "Why are you so interested in all this?" Cole asked, leaning back in his chair and eyeing her carefully. "You're supposed to be my wife for the gala, not helping me run my ranch." Tala met his gaze without hesitation, her eyes steady. "You don't understand, do you, Mr. Benson? This is not just about you or me. It's about what I can do for my people. You've lived your life in luxury, but my people, my tribe, have been forgotten. I'm here to make sure that changes." Cole was silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always thought of his wealth and power as a means of getting ahead, of living comfortably, but he had never considered how his actions could affect others. Tala's words made him uneasy. He had never had to think about anyone but himself. That night, when the two of them attended a social gathering hosted by one of Cole's wealthier friends, things became even more complicated. The moment they entered the room, all eyes were on them. Cole was used to being the center of attention. He was, after all, one of the richest men in the area. But with Tala by his side, it felt different. People were curious about her, intrigued by her confidence, her grace, her beauty. She stood out, and Cole couldn't help but notice the way she seemed to command the room, even without saying much. At dinner, as they sat across from the other guests, Tala spoke little, but her presence was undeniable. People around her whispered in awe, commenting on her striking beauty, her mysterious air. Cole, ever the businessman, was used to the game of socializing, of making connections and making people feel important. But this time, things were different. He was no longer the one in control. After the event, on their way home, Cole couldn't help but ask, "Why do they all seem so fascinated with you?" Tala shrugged nonchalantly, as if it were no big deal. "Maybe because I'm not like them. I don't try to fit in with their expectations. They find that interesting." He frowned, his brow furrowing. "It's not just that, is it?" Tala's lips curved into a faint smile. "I don't know what it is, Mr. Benson. Maybe I have something they don't. A certain confidence, perhaps. Or maybe they just like the idea of an outsider." Cole said nothing, but his mind was racing. The more time he spent with her, the more he realized that Tala wasn't simply a woman to be admired from a distance. She was a force to be reckoned with, and that scared him. Days passed, and as the gala loomed closer, their interactions became more frequent, more intense. Cole found himself questioning his initial reasons for hiring Tala. He had expected a simple solution to his problem, a woman to pose as his wife. But now, every time they spoke, he felt an unfamiliar tension, a pull that he couldn't quite explain. Tala had a way of making him see things in a new light, making him question the choices he had made throughout his life. One evening, after a long day spent discussing business and making arrangements for the gala, Cole found himself alone with Tala in the drawing room. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace, casting a warm glow over the room. For a moment, the two of them sat in silence, neither speaking. It wasn't uncomfortable, just different. They weren't husband and wife, not really, but the line between pretending and reality was beginning to blur. Finally, Tala broke the silence. "You know, I never agreed to this just for your benefit. I told you I wanted more, and I meant it." Cole turned to her, his expression serious. "I know you did, but what exactly do you want from me, Tala?" Tala met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "I want you to help me. Not just with this charade. I want you to help me change things for my people. I want to use your resources, your connections, to make sure we're not forgotten." Cole sat back in his chair, the weight of her words settling over him. She wasn't asking for a life of luxury or ease, she was asking for something far greater. She wanted power, change, and a chance to make a real difference. And now, whether he liked it or not, he was a part of that plan. For the first time, Cole realized the full extent of his involvement in this situation. It wasn't just about pretending to be a happy couple. It wasn't just about restoring his reputation. It was about something bigger, something that he had never even considered before. And as much as he tried to resist, a part of him couldn't help but admire Tala for her ambition, her drive, and her unshakable determination to change the world around her. That night, as he lay in bed, his thoughts raced. What had he gotten himself into? Was he just a pawn in her game, or was he truly willing to help her, to become part of something bigger than himself? The line between their roles, husband and wife, business partner and activist, was growing harder to see, and for the first time in a long while, Cole wasn't sure where the story was going. But one thing was clear. His life was about to change in ways he hadn't even begun to imagine. As the days passed, the tension between Cole and Tala continued to grow. What had started as a simple arrangement, a wealthy cowboy hiring a woman to play the role of his wife, had become far more complicated than either of them had expected. Tala's presence in Cole's life was no longer just about attending social events or looking the part of a respectable couple. It was about something deeper, something neither of them could easily ignore. Tala, it seemed, had a way of challenging Cole in ways he wasn't prepared for. Her opinions were sharp, her beliefs unshakable, and her confidence only grew with each passing day. She spoke her mind freely, often disagreeing with Cole on matters of business, ethics, and even how people should be treated. For Cole, who was used to having things go his way, it was an adjustment. At first, he found it frustrating. He was used to being in control, used to getting what he wanted without much resistance. But Tala was different. She wasn't afraid to speak up, to push back, and to make him see the world in a way he hadn't before. One afternoon, Cole stood by the window of his study, looking out at the vast land that stretched out before him. The ranch was his pride and joy, built over years of hard work and sacrifice. It was everything to him, his legacy, his life's work. But as he watched the workers below, laboring under the hot sun, something shifted inside him. He thought of Tala's words. She had spoken so passionately about the treatment of his workers, about how they were nothing more than tools to be used and discarded. At first, he had brushed it off as nothing more than an opinion, but the more he thought about it, the more he couldn't shake the feeling that she was right. "Mr. Benson, there's something we need to discuss," came Tala's voice from behind him, breaking his thoughts. He turned around, surprised to see her standing in the doorway. Her presence was commanding as always, her posture strong, her expression serious. She wasn't dressed in the fine gowns she wore to social events. Today she was dressed simply, a reminder that she wasn't here to play the role of a pampered wife. She was here for something much more important. "What is it, Tala?" Cole asked, trying to hide the unease that had been growing inside him. "It's about your workers," she said bluntly, her eyes fixed on him. "The way they're treated, it's not right. You know it and I know it. You need to do something about it." Cole's first instinct was to push back, to defend the way things had always been done. He had grown up in a world where business was business, and workers were just part of the machine. But something in Tala's gaze made him pause. There was no judgment in her eyes, no anger, just a quiet conviction that he had never seen before. "Are you saying I mistreat them?" he asked, his tone sharper than he intended. Tala didn't flinch. "Not directly, no. But you know as well as I do that they work long hours for little pay, and when they're injured, they're replaced without a second thought. That's not how people should be treated, Cole." The word stung, though he didn't let it show. He had always been proud of his work, of what he had built. But Tala's words forced him to see things differently. He hadn't realized how much he had turned a blind eye to the way things were on his ranch. He had always focused on profits, on growing his wealth, on keeping up with the other wealthy landowners. He had never stopped to think about the people who made all of it possible, the workers, the ones who toiled in the fields, in the stables, in the heat and dust. "I don't know what you expect me to do," he said, his voice quieter now. I can't just throw everything away because you don't agree with how I run things. Tala stepped forward, her eyes softening just a little. I'm not asking you to throw everything away, Cole. I'm asking you to consider the people who work for you. They deserve better. They deserve to be treated with respect. Cole felt a wave of frustration wash over him. He had never been good at listening to people who questioned his way of doing things. But this time he couldn't brush it off. Tala's words had gotten under his skin, and now they were festering there, gnawing at him. I'm trying to build something here, he said, his voice rising. You don't understand this land, this ranch. It's my legacy. It's everything I've worked for. Tala stood silently for a moment, her gaze unwavering. I understand more than you think, but your legacy, Cole, can't just be about land and money. It needs to be about something more. If you want to truly leave a mark, you need to think about how you treat others. The words hung in the air, heavy and real. Cole didn't know how to respond. He had never had to consider the bigger picture, the impact of his choices on others. His world had always been about power, about maintaining control, about wealth. But now, as he looked at Tala, he began to question whether that was enough. Was wealth all there was to life? Was it really worth it if it meant hurting others along the way? That evening, as Cole lay in bed, he found it hard to sleep. The events of the day replayed in his mind over and over. He couldn't stop thinking about the workers, about Tala's words, about the way she had made him see things differently. He had always believed that success was about hard work, about being the best. But now, for the first time, he wondered if there was more to it. Could he change? Could he become someone who valued people more than profits? The next morning, he decided to take action. He went out to the ranch, determined to speak with his workers, to hear their stories and their struggles. It was something he had never done before. He had always kept his distance, preferring to deal with things through managers and supervisors. But today, he was determined to do things differently. When he arrived at the work site, he was greeted with wary looks. The workers didn't know what to expect from him, and he didn't blame them. He had never shown much interest in their lives before. But today, he was here to listen. He spoke to them, one by one, asking them about their lives, their families, their struggles. He heard stories of long hours, low wages, and the constant fear of being replaced. It wasn't easy for him to hear, but it was necessary. He had spent so long building his empire that he had never stopped to think about the people who made it all possible. Now, he couldn't ignore it any longer. By the time he finished his rounds, Cole felt a mix of emotions, guilt, anger, and a deep sense of responsibility. He had a long way to go before he could fix everything, but he knew one thing for sure: things had to change. He couldn't keep running his ranch the same way he had before. Tala had opened his eyes, and he knew he had to do better, for the workers, for the land, and for himself. As he headed back to the house, he saw Tala waiting for him on the porch, her arms crossed. She didn't say anything at first, but when their eyes met, he could see the question in her gaze. Had he listened? Had he understood? Cole took a deep breath and nodded. You were right, he said quietly. Things have to change. Tala's expression softened, and for the first time he saw a hint of approval in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She didn't need to say anything. He knew he had taken the first step. As they stood there in silence, Cole realized something. He was no longer just playing a part in a charade. He was beginning to understand what it meant to truly care for others, to think beyond his own desires. It wasn't going to be easy, but with Tala by his side, he was ready to start building a new legacy, one that wasn't just about land and wealth, but about the people who made it all possible. The days that followed were filled with a new sense of purpose. Cole had never imagined his life could change so quickly, but after his conversation with the workers on his ranch, everything felt different. He had started to see his business, his land, and even his own wealth through a new lens. It wasn't just about profits anymore. It was about respect, fairness, and building something that lasted. But that wasn't an easy change, and it wasn't something Cole could do alone. Tala had pushed him to look at the world differently, to see the people he had always overlooked. Now he found himself questioning everything he had believed about success. He had grown up in a world where power was everything, where the wealthy were admired and the poor were forgotten. But Tala had shown him another way, the way of compassion, of community, and of justice. One evening, after a long day spent meeting with his workers and discussing new plans to improve their wages and working conditions, Cole returned to the house. He felt exhausted but determined. He had made promises that he intended to keep. But he knew that promises were just words unless backed by action. That's why he had called a meeting for the following morning, a meeting that would change the way his ranch operated from that moment on. As Cole walked through the front door, he found Tala sitting in the parlor as usual. She was waiting for him, her presence calm yet commanding. The way she carried herself was still as strong as ever, but tonight, there was something different in her eyes. It was as if she was waiting for something, perhaps even expecting something. "You've been busy," she said softly, looking up at him. Cole nodded. "I've been making changes. We're going to start paying the workers better. They'll get more time off and we'll make sure they have better living conditions. I've already started speaking with the supervisors about it." Tala's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, Cole saw a trace of pride in her gaze. It was subtle, but it was there. "I'm glad to hear it," she replied, "but I know this won't be easy. People like you, people who have power and money, don't change overnight." Cole sat down next to her, running a hand through his hair. "I know it won't be easy, but I can't keep going the way I have been. I've seen the way they work, the way they live. I can't turn a blind eye to it anymore." Tala didn't speak right away. She studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "It's not just about the workers, Cole. It's about your place in the world. You can't keep pretending like you're separate from everyone else. You have power, but with power comes responsibility." Cole looked at her, a frown tugging at his lips. "I didn't ask for this power. I didn't choose it. It's just the way things turned out." Tala shook her head. "Maybe, but now that you have it, you can either use it to keep people down or use it to lift them up. You can be the man who makes things right, or you can be the man who ignores the problems and keeps living for himself." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Tala had always been direct, always spoken her mind. But there was something in the way she said it this time that made him feel like he was standing at a crossroads. He could continue living the way he had, focused only on his wealth, his reputation, and his own comfort, or he could change. He could be the man she was encouraging him to be, the man who used his resources to help others, to make a real difference. "Is that what you want from me?" Cole asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "For me to change everything, to risk everything, just because it's the right thing to do?" Tala met his gaze, her expression calm yet firm. "Yes. It's not just about making money or gaining power, Cole. It's about doing something that matters, something that will last. You don't want to be remembered for the land you owned or the money you made. You want to be remembered for the legacy you leave behind." Cole felt a weight settle on his chest as her words sank in. He had always been focused on his ranch, his success. But now, in this quiet moment with Tala, he realized that the legacy he was building wasn't just about wealth. It was about how he treated people, how he used his influence to help those who needed it. And if he wanted to build something lasting, something that mattered, he couldn't do it alone. The next morning, Cole gathered his managers and supervisors in the main hall. He had a plan, and it was one that would change the way his ranch operated. The workers would get a fair wage, they would have better living conditions, and they would be treated with respect. He would no longer turn a blind eye to their suffering. It was a bold move, one that many of his colleagues might not understand, but Cole was determined to make it work. When he spoke, his voice was steady, confident, but there was an undertone of something new, something genuine. He wasn't just speaking because it was expected of him. He was speaking because he believed in it. "We're going to make some changes around here," he said, looking each of the men in the room in the eye. "The workers are going to be treated with the respect they deserve. They'll have better pay, better working conditions, and more time off. We can't keep exploiting them for the sake of our profits. It's time to do the right thing." There was a moment of silence as the supervisors exchanged looks. Some of them were clearly skeptical, others unsure. But Cole stood firm, his eyes never wavering. "This is about building something that lasts," he continued. "This ranch won't be remembered for the money we made or the land we owned. It will be remembered for the way we treated people. And if you're not on board with that, then maybe you shouldn't be here." The room was quiet for a long time, the tension hanging thick in the air. Then, one by one, the supervisors nodded, albeit reluctantly. They knew that change was coming, and whether they liked it or not, they would have to follow. That afternoon, Cole and Tala went for a walk on the ranch, the air fresh and crisp after the rain. As they walked along the path, Tala glanced at him, her eyes searching his face for any signs of doubt. "You did it," she said, her voice soft but steady. "You made the first move. You took the responsibility that comes with your power." Cole didn't answer right away. He had always been so used to running things his way, so used to being in control. But now, after everything that had happened, he realized that true power wasn't about control. It was about using what you had to make a difference, to do something meaningful. He had made the right choice. "I couldn't do it without you," he said, his voice sincere. "You've shown me what really matters. You've opened my eyes." Tala smiled, her expression softening for the first time in days. "I didn't do it for you, Cole. I did it for all of us. You just had to choose to see it." And for the first time, Cole truly understood. He wasn't alone in this. Tala had given him the courage to change, but it was his decision to make. He had to choose to be the man who made a difference, the man who used his power for good. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be obstacles along the way, but Cole knew one thing for certain. He was ready to build a legacy worth leaving behind. As they walked together, side by side, Cole realized that the journey he had started with Tala was far from over. It had only just begun. The days after the meeting with the supervisors felt like a turning point for Cole. His decision to make real changes at the ranch had set something in motion, and for the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace. The changes weren't perfect and they weren't going to happen overnight, but they were real. He had started to live up to the promise he made to himself and to the people he cared about. Tala, ever the quiet observer, had been with him every step of the way. But as time went on, Cole realized something. She had become more than just a partner in his effort to change his ranch. She had become his equal, someone he respected deeply, not just for her intelligence, but for her unwavering commitment to her people and the values she held dear. In a way, their relationship had evolved. It wasn't just about pretending to be a husband and wife for the sake of appearances. It had become something much deeper, something that neither of them had anticipated. One afternoon, as they sat together in the quiet of the ranch house, Cole watched Tala as she worked. She was writing letters, making plans, and organizing the next steps for their project. He had learned over time that her mind was sharp, her ideas creative, and her vision for a better future clear. Her presence in his life had become an anchor, helping him navigate the many challenges that came with trying to turn his legacy around. "I've been thinking," Cole said, breaking the silence between them. Tala looked up from her work, her eyes attentive. "About what?" "About the changes we've been making here," he said slowly, trying to find the right words. "And about how much you've helped me. I've always thought of myself as someone who could handle everything alone, but the truth is, I couldn't have done any of this without you." Tala raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. "You're finally learning," Cole chuckled, feeling a little sheepish. "I guess I am, but there's more to it than that. I've realized I don't want just to make the workers' lives better. I want to make sure this ranch is a place where people can thrive, not just survive. I want it to be a place that means something, not just for me, but for everyone who works here. And I want to keep doing more for the community, for the town. I want to change things on a bigger scale. Tala studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether he truly meant what he was saying. She didn't speak right away, but the look in her eyes softened. That's the Cole I've been waiting to see. Cole felt a wave of emotion wash over him, a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. He wasn't sure if he was ready to take on the responsibility of changing everything, of being the person people turned to when they needed help. But he knew he was ready to try. "Do you think I can do it?" he asked, his voice quiet but filled with the vulnerability he rarely showed. "Do you think I can be the person I'm trying to be?" Tala placed the pen she had been holding down gently and leaned back in her chair. "I think you're already doing it. But you have to remember, Cole, this isn't going to be easy. There are going to be people who resist, people who won't like the changes you're making. They'll try to tear you down, to remind you of the man you used to be. But you can't let them stop you. You have to keep moving forward." Cole nodded, the weight of her words settling deep within him. He knew she was right. The path he had chosen wasn't going to be smooth. There would be struggles, there would be setbacks, and there would be people who tried to undermine everything he was trying to build. But he also knew that he couldn't turn back. He had made a promise to himself, to Tala, and to the people who worked for him. He had to follow through. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, plans, and changes. Cole worked tirelessly, not just to improve conditions for his workers, but to create a space where everyone, rich or poor, could find opportunity and respect. He collaborated with Tala on community projects, worked with local leaders to provide resources for those who needed it, and used his wealth and influence to support initiatives that could help lift others out of poverty. Slowly, but surely, the ranch began to transform. What had once been a place focused only on profit and productivity was now a place of growth and opportunity. The workers, once treated like tools, now had a voice. They were respected. They were heard. And as word spread, Cole began to see something amazing happen. People who had once been skeptical, people who had doubted his ability to change, started to believe in him. They saw that he was serious, that he was following through on his promises, and they began to rally behind him. But it wasn't just about the workers or the ranch anymore. Cole had become an example of what true leadership looked like, a leader who cared about people, who valued kindness and integrity over money and status. And as he began to build this new legacy, he realized that he was becoming the man he had always wanted to be. One evening, after a long day of work, Cole and Tala found themselves sitting outside on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and the cool breeze carried with it the scent of fresh earth. It was a peaceful moment, one that Cole had come to treasure in the midst of the busy days. "You've come a long way," Tala said quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Cole looked at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "I couldn't have done it without you," Tala smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "You didn't need me, Cole. You just needed to realize who you really were." For a moment, Cole said nothing. He knew what she meant. He had been lost for a long time, blinded by his own ambition, by the need for power and control. But Tala had shown him something different. She had shown him the value of integrity, of helping others, of making the world a better place. She had shown him that true power came from lifting people up, not pushing them down. "I think I'm finally starting to understand," Cole said quietly. Tala turned to him, her expression softening. "I'm proud of you, Cole. You're becoming the man you were always meant to be." Cole felt a lump in his throat as he looked at her. "And what about you, Tala? What do you want from all of this?" Tala paused, considering his question. She had never been one for grand ambitions, never one to ask for much, but Cole had changed that. He had given her a chance to do something bigger than she had ever imagined. "I want the same thing you want," she said, her voice steady. "I want to make a difference. I want to leave a legacy of hope, not just for my people but for everyone." Cole reached out, taking her hand in his. It felt right. It felt like they were partners, not just in this journey but in life. They had both changed, but together they had found something that mattered more than anything else, something worth fighting for. As the last rays of sunlight faded behind the mountains, Cole realized that this was just the beginning. They had made a difference here on this ranch in this town, but there was so much more to be done. And with Tala by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. Together they would build a legacy of love, respect, and change.